Hiya, Georgie. What the fuck?
Oh my gosh, I'm doing this. I'm reviewing It. Now, what is It? It is, I don't know. So, I'm an avid Stephen King fan. I haven't read his newer stuff as much. I might make a video about that in the future. But this is going to be about It. Yeah, It. It's kind of like John Carpenter's The Thing, because we don't know what to really call it. This was my first Stephen King book I read, and I always heard about the spookiness. And to me, growing up, all you heard about with Stephen King is, oh, he writes horror. So I was like, all right, I want to read a really scary Stephen King book. So I was like 21. Yeah, I just turned 21. And I asked my mom, she asked me what I wanted for my birthday, and I said, I want a Stephen King book. I'm like, I want a scariest book. Yeah, instead of going out drinking and stuff, I decided to read. Woo! She gave it to me, and I actually sat there and like opened up the book. As soon as I got it, I just started reading it. It starts off with Georgie with the sailboat because homeboy Bill is sick with the flu, and Georgie's just sailing it along. He's just like, woo! And then it goes down the sewer, and we all know how the opening begins. And I'm not gonna lie, when I read that, I was like mortified because I was like, holy crap, this is insane. This is some outright wildness. Like, this man is insane. I instantly just thought Stephen King was kind of a psycho. Like, my mom used to tell me that she didn't like reading Stephen King because she always thought he was a little crazy. And I didn't believe her. I was like, no way. And I actually started reading this book and I realized, holy crap, this is nuts. And the other thing is with this book is after you got to have the introduction with Pennywise and Georgie's death, it goes on where you actually get to meet the rest of the cast, all the rest of the kids, and nothing really happens, if that makes sense. Like, he really puts a nice hold on the scary stuff for, I think it was like 100 or 200 pages. And he was just really sat there and just filled out the wildness. Well, not the wildness, but like just being a kid. Granted, I grew up in the early 2000s as a child and a little bit of the late 90s as a child. And when I was reading this, it did help me think about all the times when I was hanging out with my friends and we would ride bikes all over. I remember being a kid and all we would do was just ride bikes up and down streets and just be menaces to society. And this is all before, cell phones were really a thing. Like, I remember we had cell phones, but I personally didn't because it's like, I was like 8 to like 12. I never had a phone. And during that time, it was like the BlackBerry Pearl. You guys remember those? I do. And I used to think those are the coolest phones in the world. Sorry, off topic. Reading this whole thing, it really did help me reminisce. And throughout this whole thing, I think a lot of people always talk about like the bullying part of it, and I actually think it was very interesting because it did remind me of how being a child is. Granted, I never had anyone use knives and like carve out my belly or anything like that because I was like, what? Messed up. But I mean, the bullying when I was growing up was more just verbal. It wasn't like actual physical stuff, which, I mean, I don't condone. I don't think bullying is a good thing at all, but I'm just saying it's a huge difference between getting physically bullied, especially with a weapon, versus like being called names. I would rather just be called names than someone chasing me with a knife. Just saying. But when I was reading this book, that was like one of my favorite parts, is just learning about the backstory of all these kids. And by the way, my favorite character in this was Ben. Ben, I related with Ben so much because I too was the fat kid out of all my friends. I was the fat kid. Now, I didn't like to read or write like he did, but I'm just saying, I was the fat kid. I'm still kind of a fat kid now, which is fine, but I'm just saying, I grew up like Ben. I was always fat, and I really did relate with him. I always did like Beverly. Beverly was one of my favorites as well, until a scene, a thing that happens later in the book. Now, this book starts off, like I said, with Georgie and getting slaughtered. And what this book does is, it's so weird because it's like when kids start missing, all the parents and like the adults know what's going on essentially. Like they don't know it's like actually like Pennywise, but like they do, and they don't do anything about it. They just let it happen. Like I couldn't imagine having a child and just, well, Timmy down the road just died in a sewer, weirdly enough, and yeah, son, make sure you just don't go near the sewers, and just make sure you come home before it's dark out. Have fun. Like I couldn't imagine that. Like that's just, it blows my mind that they actually like did this, and it was just like okay. That's what I just don't understand at all. I never understood that. I'm like I don't know. Maybe because the parents couldn't do anything about it. But still, I mean, I feel like I would have just done a little differently, tried. Like if I was the parent and all these kids are getting eaten up, gone, missing, what do you want to do, like a search party? But at the same time, it's like, I don't know. I don't know. I am ranting too much about the parent part. Now, reading this book, it was kind of cool because it would like go to the 50s and then it would be present day, which was the 80s during the time. And I actually really enjoyed that prospect because you got to see the kids when they were kids and then when they were adults. In the after effects, what happens to them as kids actually still kind of like reflects to how they are adults. Even though personally, I think the weakest of the book is the adult part. It's more boring, you know, because it's like basically all the adults are doing is just going back to Derry, and they kind of just don't really do too much compared to like the kids are doing all these wild things. So when the adults show up, you know, they are, you know, taking care of business, which is what you want. But at the same time, when I'm like reading this, I was trying to like get through it as quickly as possible because the kids are just more interesting. Granted, a lot of the jokes like went right over my head because it's the 50s, so I didn't like understand most of these jokes. Like they would say like beep beep, and they would do like, so like Richie would do like a lot of the radio voice things, which to me as a kid, I never really dealt with that. I was used to TV, and during the 50s, TV wasn't like as big, and the radio was pretty big still. So like, yeah, I understood that aspect. But like I said, I was just kind of bored until the very end with the adults. Then I was like, oh, yeah, this is getting good. Through the whole time with the kids, I was really enjoying it. I was very happy with the results of what they were doing with the kids. I think the kids were very, very fun to follow through, and you really started to enjoy these kids. And I think the best part is he was doing things to each one of these kids with Pennywise that would scare the crap out of them. And I know this is like all over with my review and talking about this, but I really enjoyed how the idea of Pennywise, or I guess it, he can manifest into your biggest fears. Like, that is such a cool concept. That's why when I was like reading this book, I was like, holy crap. So like you have like Eddie, who is like a huge germaphobe, and then he gets chased by a guy with leprosy, and I'm like, oh my god, what is going on? And then you got like Richie, who's scared of, you know, the wolf man, so you got him turned into a werewolf, and then you got like the mummy and stuff. It's really cool. It's such a cool concept behind it all, and I just never thought of that at all. Like while reading books, I never really think of those kind of things. But yet again, Stephen King was doing something.
Cocaine's a hell of a drug.
And when I'm reading this book, I was just enjoying the aspects of just the kids of coming of age. I never read coming of age until this book. Like before I read it, I was reading just random books that were just whatever. Like I just read Harry Potter, which was kind of cool, and I was just whatever. Then I read it, and the coming of age in it is just really good. Like granted, these boys do a pretty good job at like a coming of age, but it's like it's not coming of age, if that makes sense. I don't know how to explain it. But with it, he did a really good job of just having the kids just be kids. I really enjoyed that whole aspect. Like I said, with the adults, it was kind of boring. There were some parts in with the adults when I felt like Stephen King, when there was like with the adults, and they would each one of them would meet Pennywise, it was like cranked up to an 11. And I was just, damn. There's times I was reading this book, and when one of them would meet Pennywise, it actually would scare the crap out of me because the way he would have Pennywise talk to the adults were so different than he would have him talk to the kids. Because obviously Pennywise was just trying to eat the kids, so he was just being a funny dancing clown.
Little boogie with it. Oh, what's that? The SpongeBob? Huh? Oh.
But with the adults, he was being, aggressive. Like, he is legit wanting to kill these guys because they were the ones that defeated him before. So, like, it makes sense why he was being this way. But to me, it was just wild. I just was surprised with the whole thing, and I really enjoyed this whole book, except for the one scene. I just was mortified. I didn't know what to say.
Oh! Ew! Dude! What the fuck?
Now, with that scene, yes, it's really bad, but it doesn't like take away the whole book. The whole book is really good. And besides that whole scene, I would say, like, if that whole scene was taken out, this book would be a knockout. Like, I still gave the book a 5 out of 5 stars when I did read it, because, the book was so good. That one scene was just freaking weird, and I can't believe they just let him the editors just let it through, which still, to this day, blows my mind, because it's like, that's weird. And, like, he explained why, but I still think the logic behind it is just, like, weird, because I just didn't think it was very good logic of why you did that. But, like, what am I? I'm not Stephen King. I didn't sell millions and millions and millions of copies, so he did have a lot of power to do whatever he wanted with it. So I'm like, okay. But at the same time, like I said, don't say, oh, this scene is the reason why I don't want to read this book. I mean, personally, you could just, like, skip it. Just saying. Because this book itself is really good. I mean, the book scares the crap out of you, and I would recommend watching the miniseries, watching the 2 movies, or just reading the book, or just doing an audiobook. I actually did an audiobook for a while ago, and it was really good. I actually just skipped that whole scene because I just don't want to deal with it again. But when I was reading this book, it was just such a good experience. The movies and the show doesn't do as good as the Justice does, as obviously the book, but still, I would check them all out, especially if you like the books, or you're just a fan of movies. I would check them both out. I would just check all of them out. It's a really good book. Like I said, I give it a 5 out of 5 stars when I did read it. And would I read it again? Yeah, I think I probably would, because I did like it. I just don't know when, because it is a chunker. But when you get into this world, it doesn't feel long. And when it finally ends, it's so bittersweet, because it's like, damn, it's over. It's finally over. But at the same time, you're like, damn, it's over. And that's what kind of sucks. And yeah, it's just the biggest L in the world. If you guys made it to the end of the video, I do appreciate it. Make sure you guys check out all my socials down below. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. And make sure you guys stay safe, stay hungry, and tell someone you love them. I'll see you guys in the next video. See ya.